Alrighty, it is a new month and new year, actually, and that means it is time for our power rankings for this past month, that being December 2024. There were a lot of teams that did really good. There were a short amount of teams, like very few amount of teams, I would say, that did really bad. The rest of the teams were honestly in the middle, and that's what makes this a lot of fun for sure. So let's get straight into it here. Starting off with number 32. And number 32 is the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks in the month of December had a 4-11 record with a 12-24-2 record so far this season. That's excluding games they have played in January, because I think that's a fair way of, looking at this. Like, why would you look at January games in a December power ranking video? But yeah, Chicago has really struggled again. It's highlighted by that Winter Classic effort. You see players like Bedard and Taylor Hall and them come out and say that, that effort's unacceptable and that, this team, it needs to get better. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I really don't think it's worth going much more depth into, because we know that things need to change in Chicago. I don't know when we're going to see it necessarily, but it needs to happen at some point when it comes to the effort and the overall mentality in that locker room. Something's got to change for sure. Number 31, and they would have been 32 if it weren't for their few wins they picked up at the end of the month. The Buffalo Sabres, who went 3-9-2 in December and now have a 14-20-4 record so far this season. You could probably argue Buffalo below Chicago. I wouldn't entirely disagree with you on that one, but at least Buffalo, and people kind of forget this with their 14-game losing streak they were on. A lot of the teams they were playing in that 14-game losing streak were good teams. They were playing teams that were above the playoff line, which I gave them the benefit of the doubt to. Chicago, on the other hand, they were playing teams that were above the playoff line, but they were also playing teams that they should be beating and they should be, playing at least a little bit better against, instead of, giving up as much as goals and doing what they have been doing this season. For Buffalo, I feel like things have been a little bit better, especially since after the losing streak, they did actually pick up some wins. They won 3 in a row to end off the month, which for me boosted them ahead of the Blackhawks. Number 30 is a team that has been down at the bottom of the league since the start of the season, the Nashville Predators. Things have gotten better, but not that much better. They had a 4-8-1 record in December for an 11-20-7 record so far this season. Still not thrilled with how Nashville's been this season. I'm still not particularly impressed, and I think that it's probably going to lead to a teardown. This is probably what it's going to lead to. Again, you guys know my opinion about Brunette and how I think they should let him go, but it looks like they're not going to go down that road. So it seems like what is the expectation right now is they need to have an above 500 record by the end of January, which means they need to win like 9 games in a row for that to happen. And I just don't see them doing that. Plain and simple. I think this season is basically over for them, and this take might age like milk, but I honestly think that for Nashville to come back from this, it is going to be a massive climb. And it is going to be like 2019 St. Louis Blues massive climb. And it might even be even more than that if we're being completely thorough, because this team just looks in all ways horrendous right now. Number 29, I believe, is another team that has been down here for a little bit. The San Jose Sharks, again, these are the 4 teams that, they're down at the bottom of the league. You wouldn't be surprised if they're at the bottom of the power rankings. The Sharks went 3-9-1 in December for an 11-23-6 record so far this year. That's not to, kind of throw shade at San Jose, because, again, this team is far away from being contenders. But Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini is like my favorite duo right now in the NHL. It is my favorite duo to watch. Those kids are unbelievable. Again, I know we shouldn't use like January games to put it into perspective, but that pass that Smith had to Celebrini in that game against the Devils the night that I'm recording this was insane. And even though, again, you don't count those games towards this, it just shows that the duo has been so impressive throughout this season. And even though Smith has struggled, I cannot wait to watch this team and that duo play the rest of their careers out for sure. And again, they're far from that right now. They're far from being a legitimate contender, but we expected this. And I'm not really that, I'm not going to, beat down on them that much because there's really nothing to beat down on. The team that I can beat down on is the New York Rangers, who are number 28, with one of the biggest drops, not only in the power rankings, but in the overall NHL standings. They are towards the bottom, if not the bottom, of the Metropolitan Division. They are below notable teams where if you told them at the beginning of the season they would have been below Columbus and, even like Seattle, and Buffalo would be they're honestly right there with Buffalo. Buffalo is not that far behind the Rangers at this point. I think Rangers fans would probably go into a deep depression. They had a record of 3-10 in this month, with a 16-19-1 record so far this season. It was a horrendous month. And it seems like, with K-Andre or Jacob Trouba and Capo Caco both being traded in such a short amount of time, it seems like this team and Chris Drury have really given up on the players, and it seems like the players have given up on them. It seems like it is just an absolute disaster right now. Complete disaster class in New York. And I'm waiting for the day where they decide to bounce Peter Laviolette. I'm waiting. I'm counting the days down on my calendar. When are they going to do this? Are they going to do this necessarily? I think you have to at some point. You're going to fall to a point in the standings where you're we need to do something. And that something could be firing Laviolette. That something could also be completely tearing this entire team down. That could also happen too. I wouldn't put that past them. But again, we will see where things go with the Rangers. But that was a horrendous month. And I'm just saying, again, we don't include January games in this, but January is not looking that pretty for them either already so far through it. At number 27 is actually their brother, the New York Islanders. The Islanders had a 5-7-1 record in December for a 14-17-7 record this season. Again, the Islanders, much like the Islanders that we know they are, that was about the month they had, to be honest. They would blow a ton of leads. They would lose to bad teams. It looked good against good teams, but still lose. Again, they were the team that blew the Sabres 14-game drought. And not only did they give them their first win in 14 games, they literally lost 7-1 against the team who was, losing 14 in a row. Come on, that's an immediately into the bottom 10 in the power rankings for me, in my opinion. So yeah, the Islanders really struggled. I don't know where it goes from here, but they are really not in a good spot, as I think a lot of you guys know. I think a lot of you guys know that the Islanders are not in a good spot. I don't think I'm surprising anyone by saying that. Number 26, and they might be this low just because of my pure frustration for them. The Philadelphia Flyers are at number 26 in my list. The Flyers had a 5-7-1 record in the month of December and had a 17-17-4 record so far this season. Their record this month, ironically enough, was the same as the New York Islanders, and I probably could have put them below the New York Islanders. This team makes me so angry. They are so insanely inconsistent. Pick something. And I think I said this in the last month too. Pick a way to go this season. Lose a bunch, get a high draft pick, or win a bunch, make the playoffs. And it's probably what this team's going to be for the next, I would say, 3 to 4 years, is they're going to be like Vancouver was for so long, where they were just, they would lose a lot at the beginning of the season, and then they would win enough in the second half of the season to where they wouldn't get a top 10 pick, and, they couldn't make the playoffs. It seems like they are stuck in just complete mediocrity right now, and especially after this past month where they would just give up leads like there was no tomorrow. Their goaltending is absolutely horrendous. Their offense has dried up. Michkov is not Michkov, especially this past month. His value really dropped for me. And overall, it has been a disaster month for the Flyers. And I don't think enough people are giving it a lot of headlines because, again, the Rangers are having a monumental collapse and the Blackhawks don't look good and the Predators are obviously the Predators right now and the Sabres went on a 14-game losing streak. But the Flyers also had a terrible month as well. Number 25 was the Detroit Red Wings, ironically enough. The Red Wings actually did get better in the second half of this month. But by the second half, I mean after Christmas break, so not even really like the third of the fourth. Anyways, I'm not even going to try and do math. The Red Wings went 5-7-2 in December for a 15-18-4 record so far this season. This is another rough month for them where they just could not score. And when they could score, their goaltending was atrocious. Their penalty kill has been absolutely terrible. Their power play was their only highlight. Again, I've talked about Detroit many times. I made a video on them. 2 videos, I think, this season already. And it's just not been a good year for them. They have completely struggled on all ends. However, I will say this. If things do continue how they have been, I think maybe the Red Wings could boost up this list because Todd McClellan has seemed to have let in a fire under everyone's ass, or it's just that coaching boost that you usually see. But that quote that has been making the rounds of play effing hockey is actually awesome. So I give major props to McClellan. I want to buy a t-shirt with that. And I think it's going to end up happening because the Wing Wheel podcast is putting them out. Anywho, at number 24, then after the Detroit Red Wings, you have the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks at a 6-7-1 record. Again, we're getting into the teams now where they're close to 500 or they're just above 500. Where I thought they had good years or good months, but I wasn't too keen on them. Anaheim Ducks 6-7-1, as I said. They had a 15-17-4 record so far this season. For me, Anaheim has just, they've been relying on a lot of their goalies with Dostal. They picked up some good wins here and there. Again, I'm really impressed they're only 2 games below 500 at the halfway mark of the season, essentially. So I give them a lot of credit. A lot of it is given to Lucas Dostal for sure, but their young players have looked really good. And a lot of other players on this team as well for the Anaheim Ducks have also looked solid as well. And I think that maybe we're finally starting to see the turning point there in Anaheim because for years it has just been an absolute struggle. And I think maybe now it's seemingly getting a lot better than it was previously. Next up then, at number 23, I believe, I'm already losing track, the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets actually had a pretty decent month, 6-7-3 in December with a 16-16-6 record so far this year. The Blue Jackets, led by Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Dmitry Voronkov, have all looked incredible this season, but the team besides those guys, and probably Monahan as well, and a few other players like Werenski too, they're just not that good. The depth is not there. The defensive power is not there either. The defensive game is not great. And again, I also do just think this team is not ready. But the way they have looked this season has been actually awesome in my opinion. They have really looked a lot better. And it may be the boost of, with the new coach and Dean Evison and all that. And I really do think that has really benefited a lot with this team. They seem a lot better under him than they did under Pascal Vincent 100%. And I feel like, and I don't want to bring this into it, but I feel like they do really have something to play for there in honor of Gaudreau. I really do think that this team has just that spark to them this year, and it actually makes them really fun to watch. But yeah, the Blue Jackets have looked good this season, and this is a pretty good month from them considering the fact that, nobody really expected them to have this good of a month or be where they are right now. They're tied with the Senators for the last wildcard spot. That's insane. At number 22, we have the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken had a very inconsistent month, but they ended up at 500, 6-6-1 in the month of December with a 17-19-2 record so far this season. Yeah, the Kraken, I still don't believe in them. I'm going to be completely honest. They are still the inconsistent Kraken team that we saw last season. I figured it would get a little bit better under under Dan Blausma instead of Dave Hackstall, but again, it just hasn't. Like, there's still so many underlying problems with this team, and I think that I don't know. I don't really know how you change those. The Chandler Stevenson contract has looked absolutely terrible. Again, as I said, they would win games, they would lose games, they would go on a big winning streak, then they would go on a massive losing streak. Like, it's night and day with this Kraken team right now, and I think that for sure if they want things to change, I think that it may lie on the players rather than the coaching staff. But I do think there have been some positives with Dan Balsma being the new coach and Jessica Campbell as well. I think there have been some positives. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But again, I do think that some other things may need to be done there as well. Number 21 then is actually the Utah Hockey Club. The Utah Hockey Club had a really good month, and then they teetered off. 6-5-2 in December for a 16-15-6 record so far this season. They are still in the wild card race. Not denying that. They're still fighting for a wild card spot. They're still looking like the awesome team that we know them as. But, they're just still as inconsistent as they were. They look like that Coyotes team before the 14-game losing streak they had last year. They look like that team where they were a little bit inconsistent. They'd win games, they'd lose games. It seems like we're back to that team again. And I think, to be honest with you, I think that's the right direction you want to go in. You're heading towards, you're way better than you were the previous years, first off. And you're heading towards what I think is a very bright future. And I think, under Andre Torgny, under Smith, they have all looked awesome, honestly. And maybe if it weren't for the injuries, maybe this team would be in a completely different spot. But overall, I am loving how the Utah Hockey Club have looked this year. But they really did teeter off at the end of the month, which I just could not justify ranking them above some of the teams above them. Number 20, and this might get me a lot of hate. The Calgary Flames are at number 20 for me. The Flames had a record of 6-3-3 in December for an 18-12-7 record so far this year. The reason why, part of it's why they're so low is because they played a lot less games than everyone. It felt like a lot of other teams were playing 15 games. Calgary only played 12. It seems like they had a much easier month of December. But I still think they also looked great. Again, Dustin Wolf is honestly insane. He has been great. I think that there are players, again, I said this in my video, it's rare you see a goalie win a Calder Trophy. And there are really good players in this class like Celebrini, Hudson, Michkov. But Dustin Wolf might make a real challenge for that Calder, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. He has been nothing short of terrific for Calgary, and I almost wholeheartedly give him the credit for why Calgary has been so good as they've been this season. But again, I know that's not all of it. So again, I'm still waiting for that collapse from Calgary, if it ever does happen. They're contending there for a wild card spot. They're fighting. They're staying alive. I don't know if that stays the entire season, but I also do think that they may benefit from a higher draft pick. They're looking like the Flyers last season. But again, the Flames actually did cook with their drafts. The Flyers, it's suspect. Anyways, at number 19 then, is the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins actually had a decent month. They went 7-5-1 in December and are now 17-17-5. Look at that. They go from, we're going to tear everything down to a 500 record at Christmas. I can't comprehend it whatsoever. It is always something that Pittsburgh will do where they will lose. They'll be like, let's rebuild, and then all of a sudden they'll win a bunch of games and get overtime points, because that's a lot of what it is. They've gotten so many overtime points, and so many of their games have gone to overtime. So many of their games, they look like the Islanders. They go through so many games where they will blow insane leads, like that 4-1 lead they blew against Florida. Again, I know it's Florida, but they won that game in overtime. You had no business winning that game. There are a lot of games that Pittsburgh has played, especially recently, that have been in overtime. And again, it actually is insane. But again, I don't know what happens with that. It makes the Eastern Conference all that more competitive and all that more meh, to be honest with you. So again, we'll see where the Pittsburgh Penguins want to go in their direction moving forward here now. At number 18 is the Vancouver Canucks. And the Canucks, for me, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I actually think this team might miss the playoffs. The Canucks have a record of 5-4-5 in the month of December with a 17-11-8 record so far this year. Yeah, it is not been positive this year for Vancouver. I get their record is better than it says, but Elias Pettersson versus JT Miller completely highlighted this month. The fact that this team was so insanely inconsistent, that was another thing that really highlighted this past month. You didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know if you were going to get the Vancouver Canucks from last year or the Vancouver Canucks from the beginning of the 22-23 season. You don't know what you're going to get on a nightly basis, and that's not a good thing. The Canucks look like they might miss the playoffs right now because of that. And again, in what has been a surprisingly competitive Western Conference with a team like Calgary who's unexpectedly in the race and a team like Utah who's pushing in there as well. And then you got Minnesota who rose from last season. So you're going to have a central team in the wild card. It's either going to be Colorado, Dallas, or Minnesota or Winnipeg. Probably going to be Colorado or Dallas. But regardless, one of those four teams will finish in one of those wild card spots for sure. So that only leaves one. And that could go to Utah. That could go to Calgary. That could go to Vancouver. That could go to Seattle. There's a few teams that are still battling there and are still like really in it. So again, Vancouver really needs to get their head out of their asses and they need to figure out this Pettersson versus Miller stuff. Or they need to make a move. They need to trade one of them or both of them, to be honest. I don't think that happens. That's me speaking out of my butt there. But I really do think that for this team to move forward, something has to change. Something needs to change. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but something needs to change 110%. And it needs to happen soon because you're getting to the point where you're losing a lot of games, even though you're losing them in extra time and you're not playing good, that you will miss. You will miss. And that would be awful. Again, I'll leave it at this. It's funny because I made references about this Canucks team to the past year's Devils. That was what I was referencing, and I might be right. And I wasn't even trying to be right. I just said like, oh, that might be possible. That might happen. I think I even said that on like our hot take TikTok with Mike Bartner on the podcast. It's possible. So at number 17, then I have the Montreal Canadiens. At the bottom half of this power rankings, the top of the bottom half. The Canadiens this past month went 8-6 in December for a 17-17-3 record so far this year. Yeah, Montreal looked really good this month. They had a really good second half to the month. They were beating teams that they had no business beating. I'm going to be honest. Like the Florida game, they shouldn't have won that. The Tampa game, Tampa should have beat them, but they're winning. Jacob Dokes, I think that's his name, or Dobbs, he looks insane. He looks like awesome. And with Primo getting placed on waivers, we know where that's going. Primo has not been what we thought he was going to be. But overall, I really do think that this Montreal Canadiens team has been really impressive in the month of December, and I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. And I actually really like watching this team. And again, they are another team as well who got involved in that competitive Eastern Conference playoff race that's happening right now. Let's move into the top 16 now, starting off with number 16, and you have the St. Louis Blues, the Blues who went with a record of 7-5-2 in the month of December for an 18-17-4 record so far this season. The Blues actually looked really good. In the first half of the month, I would say actually right up until the coaching change, which was early on in December, I'm pretty sure, they weren't like that great. But after Montgomery has come in, they have looked good, but I just don't know if like they are that good. Like they got the coaching oomph to them. They look a lot more organized, a lot better under Montgomery. but they need to start finding some consistency because, again, like they win in the Winter Classic to Chicago, and then they'll go and they'll lose their next game against Columbus. Again, I know that January games don't count towards this, but I'm using that example. They aren't very consistent. They aren't the most consistent team in the world. I do like how some of the players on this roster are playing, but it felt like an inconsistent month for me from this team as a whole, if I'm being honest. Number 15, then, is the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators had a record of 9-3-1 in December for a 19-15-2 record so far this season. I have loved how the Ottawa Senators have played this season. The Senators have been one of those really good stories, and especially in the month of December, where, like, they usually crash and burn. Like, they usually crash and burn in December, and they actually played really good, and a lot of it they spent on the road. They played a lot of that road trip that they were on away, and I think that's impressive considering the fact that, you know, this team has been through a lot of things, and it has not been easy for them the last couple of seasons. It's good to finally start seeing them roll, and with Linus Ullmark playing how Linus Ullmark is, I think that's a massive part of the reason why they've been so good. But Ullmark got hurt. Of course he did. So then that means that things are going to get a little bit harder, and have already gotten a little bit harder for them in the month of January, but the month is still far from over. They can definitely pull themselves out of it. But I thought for December, the Ottawa Senators had a really good month. Number 14, and number 14 might be a little bit controversial. It's the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes dropped a little bit for me this past month just because I felt like they're being a little bit inconsistent. They went 6-6-1 in December for a 22-13-2 record so far this season. Maybe I'm being a little bit hard on them, and I honestly might be. Maybe I'm being a little bit hard on the Carolina Hurricanes because even though, you know, this was a inconsistent month for them, they're still a really good team, but you can't be having months like this. You can't be having months where you are lacking scoring and you're being wildly inconsistent. You're losing to teams you should be beating. I do think that this team, they are playing good, but I think that things definitely need to find more consistency under Carolina, because if they have another month like this, I don't know, they might be caught up to by teams that are below them possibly in the standings. So again, I don't really think that happens because the nearest team is like the Flyers, and I don't think that happens. But again, as I said, like, it is not ideal to have a month like that, especially with a team at number 13 as well, the Minnesota Wild, who went 7-7 in the month of December for a 23-11-4 record so far. They dropped, I think, by a pretty big margin. I might have even had them number 1 in my November power rankings, which, if you want someone to blame for the reason why Minnesota struggled, you're looking at them. You can blame me. But overall, I think the Wild, it really, like, that was not an ideal month, especially through the first half. They lost like 6 in a row. That is not good whatsoever. They definitely picked it up at the end and ended up at a 500 record. But still, you need those wins. And especially, too, I get they gained a lot of ground on teams above them or on teams below them. But I want to say this as well. It's a competitive Central Division, a competitive Western Conference playoff race right now. And I think I said this earlier on in the video, like, it's going to be hard for a Central team to really get in there because there are 4 teams that are battling for those top 3 spots in Minnesota, Colorado, Winnipeg, and Dallas. And one of those 4 is going to be a wild card team, and whoever is the higher seed is going to be playing them in the first round. And it's possible that the Winnipeg Jets could be playing like the Dallas Stars. That could happen. That could very well happen. But again, like, you need to win games. You need to gain ground on those teams. And Minnesota didn't do that. They let Colorado catch up to them a little bit. They let Dallas get up to them a little bit. And I don't think that's ideal. Colorado and Dallas, obviously, and Winnipeg are all above Minnesota in these power rankings. So, yeah, we'll have to see where they go from here. But Minnesota, I think just an off month. They should have a better month of January. And then at number 12 going 9-4-1 in December, but I am not at all bought into them, is the Boston Bruins. They went 20-15-4 so far this season. And this team, was boosted by the Sacco hiring. It seems like their momentum really shifted. They're winning a lot of games by close scores, and if they're losing, it's ugly. But I just want to say again, like, they need to find some offense and they need to find some consistency. This Bruins team has been actually struggling to score in recent date. And when they can score, their goaltending is not that good. I just don't really believe in them this year. I don't really think that they are the Boston Bruins that we know them as. I just really cannot see it, if I'm being honest. And the more I look at this team, and especially in January, the more that I watch this team, the more that I'm more so kind of doubting them a little bit. And maybe that's what they want. Maybe that's what Boston wants, because I have been in favor of Boston for so long. But yeah, I'm going to be honest. If they play Toronto in the first round again, I might be picking Toronto. And I never thought I would be saying that, but I might be picking Toronto, if I'm being honest. And that might not even happen, because there's a possibility that Toronto wins the division and they end up playing Florida. That could happen as well. Or Tampa. Or Tampa. It depends. But we'll see where the Bruins go from here, but they need a better month of January, and it's already not looking like a better month from January. Next up then, at number 11, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning had a record of 8-3 in December for a 20-12-2 record so far. I wanted to put Tampa higher. Believe me, Tampa fans, I wanted to put Tampa higher, but I really could not justify it. There are 10 other teams in the NHL that I think had a way better month than Tampa did, and I hate to say it, I wanted to put Tampa higher, but I just couldn't. They still had a really good month. Again, this is what I said, like, a lot of teams had a really good month, and Tampa was one of them. They beat all the teams they needed to beat. They split a home and home with Florida. I think that overall they looked good in this month. They look like the regular Tampa that we actually know, without the Stamkos, without those players. And I think that you see what's going on in Nashville, maybe that was the right move. Not maybe, it was the right move, if we're being completely honest. Next up then, moving into the top 10, at number 10, I have the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings had a record of 7-2-2 in December for a 21-10-5 so far. The Kings are underrated. The Kings are wildly underrated in my opinion. I think they still had a really good month. I love what I saw out of Kopitar and Laferriere. I'm still not sure about David Riddick and Darcy Kemper. I do feel like, though, they have allowed the least amount of shots of any team in the NHL, so maybe that plays a factor in why, the goalie save percentages and things like that aren't that great. But overall, I really do think that this LA Kings team is actually much better than the team that it was last year. I just hope that the month of January treats them better than the month of January last year did, because that month of January got Todd McClellan fired last year, and he's with the Red Wings now. So, again, hopefully this is a much better January out of LA than it was last year. Number 9 in these power rankings is actually the Dallas Stars. The Stars went 8-5-1 in December for a 22-13-1 record so far this year. I would even argue that they should be below the LA Kings and be at number 10. I still see some issues with Dallas. I see some inconsistencies, and I honestly think that things definitely need to figure out there. They need to figure out that blue line. That blue line is rough. That's their biggest issue right now, I would say. So, yeah, there's definitely some issues that need to be figured out in Dallas. And I also think, too, that, they're losing the teams they should be beating. I do think there's some of that there as well. And I get, you're losing Tyler Seguin or missing a couple other players, and I get it's not ideal, but things definitely need to improve there in Dallas. Otherwise, we may see a larger drop, but they still had a good record this month. They still looked good. I still am not fully bought in on them yet, like I am Boston in a way. But I trust Dallas more than I trust Boston, if that makes any sense. Anywho, moving into number 8 on these power rankings, we have the Florida Panthers. The Panthers went 8-4-1 in December for a 23-13-2 record so far this year. The Panthers look like the Panthers. That's really all I'm going to say. They look like the Florida Panthers that we know the Panthers can be. So, again, I'm not too worried, even if their record's a little bit worse than it was last year. The team as a whole is. They lost a lot of depth. You're losing a top four defender on the blue line. You're losing really good depth pieces that they had in the playoffs last year. Yeah, it definitely, they were going to be worse, but I think they're still a really good team. I love their new ads. I love Jesper and Adam Boquist, who have been playing very consistent roles, and Jesper Boquist has looked really good for the Florida Panthers offensively. So, again, I do think that they can get better. I do think that there's more to this team, and I'm probably would take them right now as one of the 5 teams I would say that would win a back-to-back or would win a back-to-back Stanley Cups in my opinion. I really would probably think they can do it. It's definitely doable. They still have the core from when they did it. So again, we'll see. But I really do think that this Florida Panthers team is still really good, even though they are number 8 on my rankings this month. Number 7 is actually the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs had a record of 9-6 in December for a 23-13-2 record so far this year. I have my positives and I have my negatives with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I loved how they played this month without Austin Matthews, and that's the weirdest thing. I never thought I'd be saying that. They went nearly undefeated without Matthews. I think they only lost like 1 or 2 games when he was out. He comes back, they kind of struggle a little bit, then they start picking it up. Matthews is then like in and out of the lineup, which is not ideal, and that's the negative. Like, hearing that Austin Matthews doesn't know if his injury is going to be able to, be healed by next season or through next season, that's not good. That is not good. And for people saying that it's like a minor, mild injury, no, it's not. There's no possible way that a mild or minor injury would be that serious. There's no freaking way at all. If I'm Matthews, I got to be honest, take as much time as you need. Take as much time as you need, because I'm going to say this, even though Toronto would love to have Matthews, I think with the way they played without him, I think they would be okay. If Matthews needed like a month or two, and if God forbid he even misses the Four Nations tournament, I think that's okay. I think when you're looking in terms of, you want your best player back by the playoffs instead of in just pointless regular season games, I would take that. And again, as I said, I think Toronto has looked really good under Matthews. And I think that it would be the right move to honestly let him sit for as long as he needs, give him time to heal with that injury, and then come back. Don't try and just like, oh, I'm going to come back for a little bit and then leave. I'm going to come back for a little bit, then leave. Don't try that. Try and just heal the injury entirely, sit out a little bit extra more time. Again, convincing Austin Matthews to do that would not be great. But it's better you do that now than him be doing that in the playoffs. Just saying that right now. Just being completely honest with you guys. All right. Number 6 is the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers had a record of 9-3-1 in December for a 22-12-3 record so far. The Oilers are rolling. They had a really good first half. Their second half wasn't the greatest, but it was still a really good month by them. They look like the regular Oilers that we know. I still have my doubts. I'm just going to say that right now. Stuart Skinner is still a little bit inconsistent for me. But I do think still he's a really good goaltender. I still defend him with my heart because you guys know that I love Stuart Skinner. I also do think that there needs to be some upgrades of the blue line still. I like how Emerson and a few guys have played there, but I feel like you need another big name top 4 defenseman. And we'll see if they can get that done, because again, it's easier said than done. But I think they could definitely use one of those right now. I like everything else besides that. I really think that this team can go and get another Stanley Cup or compete for another Stanley Cup. Sorry. I really do think that they are that good of a team. And yeah, the Oilers just outside of the top 5 for me, I think is the right move. Number 5, I have the New Jersey Devils. The Devils finished with a record of 8-4-1 in December for a 24-13-3 record so far this year. The Devils look like the Devils that we know of them last season. It seems like those issues with goaltending and the other problems they have were solved. It seems like they are a much better team this year at the second half of the season. They really started falling off in in December and January. That was where things really got bad. But this team still is going to be that same Devils team we saw 2 years ago. They are going to make the playoffs, hopefully, and I think that they are still a really good team. I do think there are some things I would improve on, like the depth. The depth is definitely something you can always improve on. But apart from that, I think that this team is still really good, and they are one of the top contenders in the Eastern Conference for sure. Number 4, these teams got pushed down because, A,
there is a team above them that I think is playing better, and B, I think that they had some iffy months. The Winnipeg Jets are at number 4. The Jets went 9-5-1 in December for a 27-11-1 record so far. I shouldn't really say iffy. They had a really good month, but I think that the teams that are in front of them had better months. The Winnipeg Jets looked really good this month. They defeated the Minnesota Wild. They defeated a lot of other really good teams, and I think that they are still that Jets team that we saw in October, even though I do think they are a little bit worse. They fell back down to earth, which made a lot of sense, but they still are a really good hockey team, and they should win the Central Division. They aren't even the best team on this power ranking in the Central Division, but that's because some team surged in front of everyone else this past month. And I think that overall the Jets had a really good month, and I don't think I really need to go more in depth. They are still a really good hockey team, and I think that there's no denying that. Number three is the Washington Capitals. The Capitals went 8-4-1 in December for 25-10-2 records so far this season. They are great. They are terrific. I love watching the Capitals. The Capitals are actually one of my favorite teams to watch this season. They are so much fun. I love watching Dylan Strome. I love watching Connor McMichael. Ovechkin came back in the later half of this month and has looked awesome too. Yeah, this is a team that is so impressive, so much fun to watch right now. Logan Thompson looks like an insane goalie. Lindgren also looks good too. The defensemen are racking up points. Chikrin's look terrific. Overall, this entire Washington Capitals team is rolling right now, and I cannot wait to see where things go from here with them. They are so entertaining to watch. It is truly a blessing. Number two, we got two more teams above those teams that were actually, I think, 1-2 last month. The Colorado Avalanche are number 2 for me. The Avalanche went 10-3 in December for a 23-15-0 record so far this year. They get goaltending. They get Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood in the beginning of December. They go on an absolute tear. This was actually an insane month from Colorado. And considering the fact that they finally have that, it's not like terrific goalies. It's not like a, Sergei Bobrovsky or Igor Shesterkin or, guys like that. They don't have like that good of a goalie. They got 2 really good tandem goalies in Blackwood and Wedgwood. And now that they finally have that, they are rolling. They are absolutely rolling right now. They surged up these power rankings. They had a terrific month, and I think that this is the standard that Colorado wanted at the beginning of the season. And I think what was really holding them back was goaltending. 100%. And now that they finally have that, I think they are going to go on just a generational run coming up now. All right, finally at number 1, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights finished with a record of 10-2 in December for a 25-9-3 record so far this year. They only have 1 regulation loss. Nobody in the NHL right now is better than the Golden Knights, in my opinion. Even if you look at standings, I know that Winnipeg is ahead of them, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think anybody in the NHL right now is better and hotter than Vegas right now. They look like that team. And being led by, players like Shea Theodore, Jack Eichel's tearing it up this year. Mark Stone, when he's in the lineup, has looked really good. Aiden Hill, proving why he is a 4 Nations goaltender. He had a really good month as well. This is an incredible team. I doubted them in the offseason, but being led by mostly the guys they had last season, they look just absolutely terrific, and I love watching them. And that is my December 2024 Power Rankings, the final monthly Power Rankings of the 2024 calendar year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What teams that I have too high? What teams that I have too low? Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like down below. If you really liked it, please subscribe down below if you're new. I would greatly appreciate that as well. Anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video.